Right, this is going to be another episode of Hot Take Point Made. We haven't yet done that thing I suggested earlier where we tally up either what were the good takes or the bad ones or whatever. Maybe at the end of CSGO, maybe that's what we'll do. Maybe at the end of CSGO we'll see because it'll be roughly almost like a year we'll have done the show. Maybe we'll do a thing where it's here were the best of our hot takes, here's were the worst ones or whatever. Because I've had a few little bangers too. I had that one where outsiders would basically never do anything ever again, ever in the history of the world. I had a bunch that were pretty good, I think I had one like cadiaN will never win a title with him as main ops, some shit like that. I can't remember what
that one worked.
Major or something. There's a bunch that were pretty good, but obviously, on this episode, we have kassad, Mauisnake, the usual crew, right? Maui, do you have a hot take to start us with for this one?
Yeah, I'm gonna start scalding. I'm gonna start, and it's gonna frustrate people. It's gonna frustrate kassad. It's gonna frustrate everybody from Serbia as a point. It's that NiKo is the biggest major choker in history. He's the biggest major choker in history. Let's think of all of the moments that NiKo has now when you think of him and majors. The first of which is, of course, the Boston Major, where up 15-11, losing to Cloud9. The second of which is the Deagle shot that he misses against Simple in the Stockholm Finals. And now the third of which is not even qualifying for the playoffs through two different reasons that he did not qualify. One of which was, to me, round 16 against Bad News Eagles, where he missed the free USP shot into the side of the head of Scenery, and he missed just multiple USP shots. Tush, 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 missed all of them, and that could have easily gave his team the momentum to close that map out in the BO1 stage, and also on map 3, Vertigo against Fnatic, he was just feeding it ramp, he was feeding it A, and Fnatic were just going A over and over and over again. I know this is going to get pushed back. I'm ready to hear it.
You are a fool.
It's always the opener. Go on, hit me with it.
Hey, how can you even say something? Did you even watch the games?
I mean,
to be fair, he was citing things in the games.
I was covering both.
You were at the major, right? You were there.
I was covering them.
But did you actually watch them? Did you actually watch them?
Yes, I was.
Okay,
kassad, you ask anybody that is at the major what was going on in the green room. I pull up a chair individually. I pull up an individual chair to sit closer than anybody because I want to watch the radar. I want to watch the game. I'm watching so closely. I'm right there. I'm right there in front of the screen. I'm glued to it.
Listen, I'll do this, and I need you to be perfectly honest with this. I need you to be like an honest man that I know that you are. Right?
Yes.
I will give you $1,000.
Fucking hell. Okay.
If you go...
I'm already so scared. Go on.
If you go and rewatch those games and tell me we have the same opinion. $1,000 in cash in front of all these people that are watching, I'll give it to you if you rewatch the games and if you have the same opinion. But let's start from the start. Boston. You were how old were you? 17 then? Back then? Did you watch that?
He's not that young.
I was 26 or something. I was 25 or 26. Yeah.
Anyway,
it was a good joke though. It was a good joke. Go on, fair play.
In Inferno 15-11, and not just the 15-11, the calls that were made during that half that they played on the T side was just about the worst thing that you can call in the playoff game that I have ever seen. In those finals. That's a choke that comes to other people. NiKo was a part of it, but he is not solely responsible for that one. That's the Boston one. So we're going to leave that in the past. The nuke on...
at Stockholm.
Stockholm, he missed a shot. He missed a shot from the Deagle, from ladder into the top hut. Simple killed him. That doesn't even mean that they would probably win that major. That mean that they would maybe win.
They would have won map 2. They would have won map 2 right there. That's all it took.
They win a map 3 on Mirage, which wasn't really a joke.
Big question. That's a question that
wasn't a joke right there. And now that they come back to them not qualifying to the playoffs or coming out of the legend stage, that is gonna tie it up to my hot take, and my tweet. And the thing is, NiKo had absolutely nothing to do with that in the majority of the situations. You mentioned the missed shot on
the
pistol round in the second. Yeah. NiKo had 30 and 16 on that map. He single-handedly delivered so many rounds during that matchup. He missed that final shot, and you call him the biggest major choker. You are insane. The thing is, like, that makes no sense. He's like, look at the numbers that NiKo put, the impact that NiKo does in these games, in the major. Yeah, you're talking about Vertigo and his inability to deliver any impact. I explained this in my video. I explained this in the tweet. And for people who don't know and who don't understand my tweet, some of them are classic NPCs. Some of them are genuine, normal people. I was called out at the end of the Katowice final when HooXi was about to celebrate with his teammates winning that final. Instead of celebrating with them, he stood up, came into the circle and yelled, "Are you watching, kassad? Kassad, are you watching?" So my response to you is, yes, I'm watching. I'm watching you ruin NiKo chances to win the major. Did you? I watched that. I'm going to do that. You notice that I'm doing the demo review the last few days. And I'm going to do the Vertigo map. And shit that happened right there is possibly, but not possibly, 100% on HooXi on that one. And not just because of the veto. We spoke about the veto and the fact that, you know, you have NiKo, who is one of the probably most impactful players in the outside yard. Mauisnake, who has one of the best maps on Nuke. Hunter is playing very good Nuke. And JKS, who played the best event, who played an absolute beast throughout the whole event, he's super good on Nuke, especially on the T side. And you just disregard all these things, and you go for a Vertigo that's arguably your worst map. Second worst map after the one that you permanently banned, which is Overpass. And then you decide to go and say, like, oh, it's NiKo's fault because he had a rating on 0.65 or something. The situations that he was put in were absolutely stupid, and they had to go back from 6-12, if you remember that. It was a 6-9 half, they lost the pistol, it's a 6-12, and they got to 12-12 based on Mauisnake and NiKo towards the A side. He did made a aggressive play on 13-13, and down the ramp he got killed, but he also made a place on the same half, getting those kills together with Mauisnake, who died on behind the sandbags on 14-13 or 15-13 or whatever it was. So in these cases, when you play halves like that, those mistakes, those deaths are going to happen, right? They're going to happen. They had so little margin of error to come back into that 6-12 half that HooXi put them in. Just look at the second pistol on that map as well. Look at the calls, look at the flashes, look at the utility, the positioning, the transitional, the offense. It's just terrible. And I noted that in the new game against Vitality. And all these things brought them to 6-12. And then the individual skill from NiKo and Mauisnake, and the fact that it's CT side, you have the high ground on the ramp, and you have, you know, positional advantages. You get to 12-12. They made a couple of mistakes towards the end. Mauisnake died, NiKo died once, which is something that you count on in a map like that when you prepare. Obviously, you don't count it to be a 13-13, but you do count on those things to happen. And they did happen in the worst possible time. Does that make NiKo choker? Absolutely not. Because he's the best rated player for God knows how many years in G2, in FaZe, in Maus, in every team that he played. Is he a choker on major? Absolutely not. We need to examine what the hell happened on that tournament and the tournament before that. And the structure and the shit that have been doing during the event. It's not on NiKo, it's absolutely on HooXi.
What I would say is this, you could jump back in a second, Maui. I would just say, first of all, I don't really have a dog in this fight in the sense that I do think NiKo's had some underwhelming moments at the majors and some underwhelming elimination games. But I also think when you say choker, like, just to be honest, I'm not implying you're not, by the way, but I'm saying if I was to say that, I'd have to also, like, go back and verify all the other ones, because basically there's another podcast where I reference this that people will see soon. But off the top of my head, I can pretty quickly, by the way, put together like a low lights finals, sometimes finals even, or like maps in like deep playoff runs where every great player shit the bed at the major. Like, I'm talking about... Olafmeister's lost a major final. Do people know that? Get Right has lost 4 major finals, by the way. Your boy Forrest, by the way, never even came close to a fucking major MVP. You know what I mean? Like, there's loads of names fucking... The joke is, actually, the guy that never won one, Guardian, played, like, exceptionally well in most of his major finals. He's actually almost an alien in that sense. People know... I mean, to be fair to Maui, he was consistent in this sense. Simple's had a bunch of screamer fucking major finals or in prestige finals in general, where he's sometimes just done that thing where you just like try to do way too much and you shit the whole bed and the game gets fucked. Like, he's had a bunch that he's fed. So I would also say, I do think people have done this thing where I think essentially Michael Jordan broke everyone's brain in sports because he made you believe if you're actually good, you never lose. And you're always the top fragger for your team in basketball context. And you're always the best player in the match, right? And I think that made people believe life is like a movie and you can just do it at will. Whereas, like, I actually think, in my opinion, it's more like even really great players, you need a bunch of shots at it. And then sometimes you absolutely are just going to have a bad day. Sometimes you might even choke. There's another thing. I think you can choke without always being a choker, if you know what I mean. So I think the thing that's interesting to me is when I heard Maui talk there, I actually feel like he made more of a case there, which I think is almost inarguable, that NiKo just has some like flashpoint, no pun intended, obviously, because it's not about that. He just has moments that will stick in people's minds that were in like major finals, for example. Because I'm with kassad on the one from the PGL one. I think that's whack, mate, because the problem is this. He was having one of the best maps ever on that nuke game. Like, the CT half, he just straight carried against Na'Vi. Na'Vi was a very, very good team at the time. Everyone knows they won the major undefeated, all had bonkers stats. On the second half as well, that shot was on 15-12, as in G2 had 15. Like, they didn't just lose 3 rounds because he missed the shot. And then secondly, people never add this part in, right? It's not like he whiffed his shot, as it were, and then, you know, fucking Boomich took over and shit on him. Does no one remember how that map ended? Simple was having a really quiet game most of the map, and almost exactly around that time, like a round or two before, Simple went supernova for like the last something like 7-8 rounds. He had like that crazy like thing where he came up the vent with the AWP and shot. He had a bunch of, through the fucking door. He had a bunch of rounds where he just went absolutely mental. So spoiler, the GOAT essentially, you whiffed once and the GOAT just went, sorry, you don't get another chance at the game, and just won the other game. So that one I think is a bit fugazi. The one in the Boston major, I do think he was underwhelming in that. I also agree with kassad though. I think put it this way, there's a reason why I'm considered like the biggest karigan fan ever. But I even said, look, my problem with replacing him is who were you bringing in? And I knew it was going to be like fucking Exist or Flusher or something. But I always say this, in a fucked up way, if I had the super team and I do think karigan choked his calls on that game. If I choked the calls like that, if I am all those players, especially the ones that had won, like the Olaf Weisses of the world, I would sort of go like, we might have to replace you, mate. Like, you know what? Maybe you go away and you get it back and you learn how to overcome this. But you used to choke with TSM and Astralis. You just choked away the final. Like, we had it, mate. It was 15-11. And what are you doing? You're doing like stupid rushes through smokes. You're doing like 4-second rushes onto a site. You know what? We can't have a. One thing I'll hate, by the way, as a general rule in Counter-Strike, is any time you get one crack at planting the bomb and you aren't in a 1vx, you fucked up the round immediately as the IGL. Like, you have to allow a contingency that, like, a guy can get shot planting the bomb without clearing the site. Like, that can't be, that's not a tactic, guys, if people don't know. That's not even as kassad did the closer. Like, if anything, you did the closer too late in the round. That's why you get shot by one bullet and it fucks the whole round. And then I'd also just say a couple of other quick things. One, that's why I say I think it's just the moments that Maui's identifying. Because I agree on the one about the fucking Bad News Eagles one. That's got to be the worst example ever to give. Because on that map, that was probably one of the best maps any individual played at the major. If you don't know, on both sides he had the most kills. So even on CT side, he had like 10 kills or something, which was the most for his team. His whole team shit the bed CT side. And then on T side, bro, did you see his numbers? He was like fucking completely banging out of control. I think he had 130 ADR. Like, on that scenario, at the end of that game, you don't go like, right, in order of everyone who failed, like, he's at the bottom. He's at the bottom of that list, you know. You don't start with him. You don't go, NiKo, I needed fucking 35 kills, mate. I needed even more. You know what I mean? Especially because I'll point this out as well. It's not like CT kills is like, oh, he has the resources and the spit. Like, CT kills, if they come to your site, you shoot them with a crosshair. Like, that's so I dispute completely the BNE one. You can do the Fnatic one. There's angles with that. That's why kassad made the whole map veto case. So I just think it's a complicated topic because, like I say, to me, it touches on an abstract that no one wants to acknowledge. I'll probably do a video on it soon, which is I actually think most great players play worse the more pressure there is, and especially in major finals, because most players don't get like 6 chances. You get 1 or 2, and if you're someone, by the way, like a NiKo, remember the other thing about the PGL one that makes it different from the Boston one to me is he had no business even being there. He went God morning as heroic to get them there, which is the old simple curse I told you, which is you're too good. So because you're too good, instead of losing like a really awesome semi-final that you frag out in and then lose and go, my bloody team, you win the match. So they go, holy shit, if they're in the final, they could win this. It's like, you go watch that series. Could they have won that? I'm with kassad, even if they win that map. I think Na'Vi just goes, well, we had a really good chance here. We did the comeback, reset, easy clap, probably 16-9 Mirage. That's the major for us anyway. So I just think, like I say, I'm sort of in between the two positions on this one. I understand for kassad, by the way. Like notice he didn't even say like you never played badly or whatever. He essentially just says he has reasons as to why. So I think I can see both people's perspectives. Do you have some comeback on this, Maui?
Yeah, that basically like it's about like the whole choking thing, and I'll just open up this.
Like, by the way, in this, at some point in this answer, can you try and do what I did there? Can you contrast it against other players? Like, is there other players that make it more egregious that NiKo choked, for example, or is it just NiKo in isolation?
Most all-time great players have had bad finals in CS:GO. There's not like one guy that's just like suddenly just the most clutch player ever, which is why the reason I'm opening up this discussion. And I'll be personal about it, is that Yanko has to always retweet these fucking Steph Curry fucking cherry pick stats about last 45 seconds doesn't make a go-ahead basket. And you know what? Yanko just fucking loves that shit, okay? But it's the most cherry picked bullshit ever, because if you look, it's like, oh, we want to go over that with that method. How many kills did NiKo get in the last 4 rounds of his event? 0. First death. Last 4 rounds, up 13-12. 13-12, who was the first to die? NiKo. 13-13, who was the first to die? NiKo. 14-13, who was the first to die? NiKo. 15-13, who was the first to die on his team? NiKo. So it's just like, you can cherry pick these things in any direction. Do I think NiKo is a big choker on massive stages? Not really. He's actually won a handful of championships, but that's kind of the ethos of this show, is that you're trying to just like put forward some kind of idea that just fits this like convenient narrative. And it's like, is NiKo... I'll give a couple other ideas and stats that maybe make you like question this or open up the dialogue a little bit more. Is that in NiKo's 13, in my eyes, S-tier LAN championships, he won the MVP in 7 of them. So it's like half of those he's not winning it. So is he always the hard carry mega fragger for his team? Actually, frequently, yes. It's just that you honestly, like, you could, you know, flip a coin and half the time it's somebody on his team that's actually doing a little bit better than him. So I'm not necessarily, I personally think NiKo is top 2 rifler in CSGO history. I just think that when we like want to throw these labels on people, there's a lot of angles you can tackle it at. And that's why, fuck you, Yanko. Steph Curry's not a fucking choker. Like, he's doing it all in the 3rd quarter. So yeah, like, but I think the conversation's there that he has a lot of his memorable moments in these choke scenarios, and he's fallen short time and time and time again. No, I don't think anyone's done it 3 times like this, where it's like, get right in the early 5 majors. Yes, he had some bad ones, but like he also had some really good series too in some of those. So I wouldn't necessarily throw him under the bus too. I just think that the conversation's open, and it's why I think cherry picking choke stats is kind of a fruitless effort, because honestly, like you're saying, Michael Jordan made us brainwashed into believing that everybody can do it like a hero every single time. But in reality, people are going to regress to their mean a lot of the time in terms of their output. And NiKo actually usually does very well, but in a lot of these big moments that the crowds and fans are going to remember, he actually came up short.
By the way, just as an aside, because I'll actually use the basketball reference, that's actually one thing I do hate, because essentially I actually think NiKo and LeBron have similar qualities, mate. I actually think like they are both exceptionally good players. It's almost undeniable. If someone wanted to have them as like the best for whatever reason, they can do it. I'm not going to do it. But the reason why I don't accept the idea they're chokers, because when you say choker, people do think it means you choke every time. You're not a winner. You can't win. The reason why that doesn't even work for LeBron is exactly what Maui just said there. So, by the way, the irony is that LeBron and Steph Curry fans waste their fucking time having the argument about who the choker is. You dumb motherfucker. They're both the same player in the sense that they both just like dominate the first half and the 3rd quarter, and then yes, they need someone else to close the game. Like, that doesn't mean they choke. Like, a choke would be like you did nothing and then you also did nothing in the 4th quarter and you didn't win the game. Like, so to me, I think it's whack. Like essentially that's what I was saying about the other thing. Like, if you carry a map that they lose and then you lose a later game, it's like, wow, I won the fucking game before. Like, what am I supposed to do? So, do you have anything else on this, kassad, before we move on?
Yeah, the thing is, like, it's not the choking is like when you have a map that's like 518, right? That's a choke when you shit your pants because of the match is big, and it's like you don't deliver any frags, you don't deliver any impact at all. You just all over the place. You don't do anything. That's a choke, right? That is a choke. It's not a choke if you drop 30 frags and 16 deaths, and you miss a shot in the pistol against Scenery or whoever that was, and it's just like immediately you are labeled as a choker or something, right? It's not a choke if you miss on a 15-12 deagle shot from ladder into the top hut. You said yourself, Duncan, he had a great game, that map. If it wasn't for his game, it wouldn't even be 15-12. Yep. It would be 10-16, 9-16. So yeah, the choke would be if he's like, he has like 9-22 or something, right? 7-11, 7-19, whatever, right? Something like that. That would be a choke, and I would probably agree. Like if that thing repeated over the course of the map after map after map, that means something, right? But it didn't happen, so there is nothing wrong with that. But the thing is, I set my stance on when it comes to the last map against Fnatic. It's just I was even looking at the stats in the last 6 months. Nuke was 14-3 for G2, and Vertigo was 4-4. Like there is no humanly earthly power that can make me change my mind when it comes to the veto.
Yeah, I would have gone with Nuke also. I would have gone with Nuke also, kassad. I thought it was kind of crazy that they went with Vertigo. Like they had to have spotted some very particular weakness. But it's like if you're basing your whole reason for third picking your life at a major on an anti-strat, I actually think that's just generally a flawed idea, because the other team can just switch up what they're doing a little bit with a single adjustment if they recognize you're abusing that flaw in their game plan. So I thought that was a failure in the veto.
Listen, even the map against Vitality in the first round, they were 13-13, at some point. They'll also be in the second pistol, 10-7, 4v2. There is a push from HooXi. I did a demo review, and NiKo is falling back, HooXi is pushing forward. And it's obvious call, let's push together. They die together, they lose 2v4, they don't have the money, they force buy, they lose 12-7, they come to 13-13, they go into an upper side against HooXi, and they win the round. So it's just a lot of these things that people don't see if they don't rewatch the game. So that's why I recommend you rewatch it and see what things that I saw. I'm sure that you're gonna see them. The rotations, the way they move, the way they call, the way he uses the utility, the way he rotates, the way other people rotate because of it. It's just all connected. And if you watch it, you'll see what I'm talking about. Anyway, HooXi's fault.
So your hot take. We should just do your hot take.
Now, my hot take is not going to be connected on this one for now.
Okay.
But I'm going to use a different one. That FaZe is not even a top 5 team anymore. FaZe is not even a top 5 team.
Give us your top 5 then, just so you can complete the point then. Come on, give us it. What's your top 5 if they're not top 5?
So I have to pick top 5 right now.
I mean, logically, for them to be not top 5, you'd have to know the top 5.
Well, I know the top 5. Yes, but I don't know the exact order.
Oh, you don't have to give us the order. Just give us 5 teams better than them. How about that? Give us 5 teams
at this
better.
Moment. At this moment. Vitality, Heroic.
Oh, God, stop the free kick. It's okay. Give him time. Give him time.
It's not FaZe.
It's not FaZe. Well, obviously not. So.
Vitality, Heroic, and I would say
Navi.
Navi would be 3.
Liquid.
Cloud9.
Liquid's top 5.
Cloud9 would be 4. Thank you.
Oh, Cloud9.
Cloud9 would be 4. Thank you. And I don't know. I don't have the 5th one, and it's not FaZe. Maybe I just need to cheat a little bit, see what happens here. Who am I missing?
Just say Liquid. Just come to the dark side.
I can't say
Liquid. Do you think Ents is better?
No way.
I'm just trying to help him. Trying to help him.
No way.
Listen, I can't co-sign this tweet at all.
Listen,
I think you would say
Ents is closer. Ents is
G2? G2?
G2
yeah, why not?
Oh, in that case,
G2
easily.
Liquid.
Yeah, they go
G2 or Liquid easily.
Yeah.
G2 Ents. G2 Ents. Liquid is not even close to FaZe.
Right, give us the reasons why then. Why is FaZe not?
They beat them at Kato.
Why is FaZe not good enough?
Wait, what did you say, Maui?
They beat him at LAN on Kato. They beat FaZe at LAN.
Who did?
Liquid.
Liquid beat them to qualify to playoffs of Kato.
2 months ago, dude. Like, who cares about that? Did you see them play on Major?
So you mean right this moment?
And they made playoffs.
Yeah, at this moment, right now. What do you mean?
They made playoffs. I mean, whatever. If you don't want to say
they made playoffs and they lose.
I was almost trying to help your case by saying it, but I think Liquid's right. I think Liquid's neck and neck.
But you're just trying to defend Liquid. Anyway, my point is, FaZe is not even top 5 right now. The reason why I'm saying this is because I rewatched all of their games from the Major and from the RMR and from the Last Chance qualifier, and it is just terrible what I'm seeing. It's just all over the place. They don't have anything to fall back onto when things get rough. Their basics are all over the place. If you watch the demo review that I did against their game against Heroic on Inferno, that was a 16-7 for Heroic. I think you did that game on your watch party, Duncan. I was on Richard's stream, I think, and we were watching that together. It's just the way they do things on the basic level is just not even close to top 5, not even close to top 8, let alone top 5, because spacing, utility, all these things, rotations, understanding and reactions to what's going on the map is very poor. Very, very poor. And all these sharp teams with sharp individuals, they don't have any depth behind like their game. They're just sharp. They're punishing them as soon as their individual level drop. As soon as it drops a little bit, as soon as you don't see Twist or Broky having a great game or Rob's having a great game. Rob's, by the way, who is baiting way more than he did before. There is a couple of rounds that I did in the demo review that you will clearly see that his movement is supposed to be completely different if you want to win the round. And you can see kadiaN in front of his team a bunch of times where everybody else is staggering behind. They're not entering the site together. Those are the basics. And like I said, that makes me wonder what the hell is happening on their practice. What are they? They're just booking scrims and they're playing? And somebody comes along tomorrow and is like, okay, we need to add this threat. Look what I see. I see this flash here. We do this molly here, this smoke there, and we just go into the site. And nobody's paying attention to the basic stuff, right? And then I had a thing where I explained the coaching, the state of coaching, like a few months ago, Duncan. I think you and me did the video. And when I was explaining, the analysts are not doing pretty much anything. They're being underused. They're being useless. And I think one of their analysts called me out on it. I didn't respond to any of it, but he's like, yeah, you cannot say that, maybe because we are not doing it your way doesn't mean it's wrong. Like he was like trying to call me out between the lines in a kind of polite way, right? And then they go out in Rio and they go 0-3. I watch their demos and it's just a catastrophe, right? And it comes down to kadiaN and the lack of coaching in that team and the coaching structure in that team. Because if you have a proper coaching staff in that team that will pay attention to that and show you on the demo, like, listen, look at how we are going into the site. Like, look how far away are you from me? Look at our flashes. Look at our utility. I saw them in the rounds where they are 135 with full gun rounds and I have one flash left. And they don't have control of bracket or banana. And they try to execute it to the site. So how do you win those rounds, right? Those are the basics. That's nothing to do with your aiming, like your raw skill or anything like that. That's the basics that you do on practice. Makes me wonder what the hell is happening there. Like, what are they doing? I want to observe their practice to see how that feels. Like, is it there is no theory, there is no, like, we just booked the scrims against 4 teams, we play, see you later, see you tomorrow, gonna go get some dinner, and that's it. Like, that's how it looks like to me. And that's the result.
I'm so on board with what you're saying, Kassad. I would say that I've been noticing this about FaZe for the last, I want to say, like 3 years, where it really does feel like a lot of their players come across to me as uncoachable. The nades that FaZe have been throwing to me, I mean, not even to me, they're just outdated. A lot of the ones, so like, you go into a practice server and you see when you throw this smoke, the land time, like the air time and the land, like when it lands, it's like 3.5 seconds after you threw it. The way that FaZe have been throwing nades for such a long time have been the nades that have just been inefficient in terms of timings. Like the ones that a lot of tier 2 teams, even like Liquid, throw better nades. Like the Gamer Legion obviously threw better nades. Vitality are throwing better nades now. Heroic are throwing some of the best nades out there. FaZe are throwing these nades that to me are so outdated. They're just throwing ones that are like I remember very specifically watching some of their games and just like when I played at the ECL level, a couple years ago, we knew more updated nades than what FaZe were throwing, and so we never looked at FaZe demos because we were just thinking it is just individuals popping off, getting multi-frags, relying on their ability, relying on their fundamentals, which sometimes even fall apart in a game, and so like, yeah, the coaching aspect of this team to me is so frustrating because you would think if Innershine's there and Rawban's there, and this is why I didn't vote for Rawban as coach of the year or anything like that, because they're just throwing nades that are just out of date. They're throwing nades that are worse in terms of the meta. You're not able to cross spaces as quickly, and that's why a lot of these teams that are in the tier 2 space to me are more consistently finding upset victories, and they're not having to they don't need these crazy individual pop-off performances from Broky and Twist because these tier 2 teams don't have them because they're throwing a smoke that lands a second and a half faster. Like, that's such a huge difference in terms of timings when you're playing high-level CS. You need the grenade that is going to allot you space quicker and then change up the rotations so that that vent nuke that vent rotator on nuke is not going to be able to get down to lower as quickly, because the smoke you threw for a cross smoke lands so much faster that you can basically meet him as he's swinging out of the vent. That's such a huge difference maker, and FaZe are missing out on those timings, and they're relying on individuals so consistently to pop off and to hit headshots that's why those guys are admittedly paid more than everybody else, like Twist and Rops and Rain, whatever, because they can have those. Not hope. I mean, we'll see. We'll see what happens with the future of their contracts, but if they're going to just keep playing like that, they're going to fall out of favor in terms of consistency. And it's kind of this same cycle that I've seen for such a long time with, like, I think LGSK was the first time I really noticed this cycle, where it's that what happens is these underdog teams, they learn the meta better than anybody. In fact, they might even create the meta with what SK did with Fallen and coldzera. They like learn the strats better than anybody's. They gain such crazy confidence because they understand the meta. They have better nades than everybody in the space. And then because they just rely on their individual ability, because they are getting ahead because of these little incremental differences in their utility and their strategy, that they begin to believe that their own ability is what's carrying them there. And so they begin to relax. They don't really try as hard in terms of the prep work, in terms of learning all the new nades. And so they start to fall off a little bit because they think, you know what, our individual ability is what's going to actually carry us at the end of the day. And that's why you see Fallen with these crazy highlight rounds in tournaments where, like, SK is not actually the favorite to make it deep, and then coldzera is winning this crazy 1v3 clutch. It's almost like towards the tail end of a team's tactical dominance, their individual ability shines the most because they have the most confidence as individuals. And that's kind of what FaZe have been running on for the last 6 months, where it's just off of these crazy fumes where they believe that they're the best players in the server time and time and time again. But in actuality, they're way behind in terms of tactics. They're like a year and a half behind.
And that is why, sorry, Duncan, before you jump in, and that is why, first of all, you know, if you watch the G2 Vitality, for example, you'll notice the same thing. G2 is coming back on nuke all the way to the truck to throw the cross smokes, you know, when there's like 3 versions of the same smokes to throw him like more forward, closer to silo, things like that. That is the same thing that you just described, just different map, right? But also what I wanted to mention is, like, what pissed me off about that tweet from kadiaN when he's like took a picture of Twist and like, oh, he's already back on deathmatch, and like how deathmatch is not what you need.
To learn some nades.
Deathmatch is not what you need. Like yes. You don't have, you know, disadvantage when it comes to fights in a one-on-one with like aiming. That's not your disadvantage. That's not your flaw. That's not your problem. That you have team problems, you have like reaction problems, you have utility problems, you have understanding the flank, those type of problems. Go watch the game against Heroic. You'll see him watch flank a couple of times, staying on the flank where he could be helping the team trade in the A side of Inferno. And he's staying somewhere down. The same goes for Brokey. Brokey positioned himself, even when he doesn't have an op, he positioned himself in a spot where he's doing nothing for anyone, instead of trading with people who are in front of him. You can see kadiaN jumping out, dying alone, Rain being 7 steps behind. And I did a comparison of the same strat, similar strat, or similar exit from Heroic, and the way they execute, the way they go out together in a certain spot, and you can compare those two and see where the difference is. How can, when you see if Robs needs to aim at 2 people at the same time, when Shush is aiming at 1 and then on the second. And those are the basic things. You don't need a fucking deathmatch. Just go, rewatch your game, talk to your coach, talk to your, you know, analyst or whoever it is that you have, figure out the basics, and you will be back at the top. Now you are top 10, and that's all.
I mean, I will say, I do think it's good that kassad actually gave the example, because I was going to also tie this to why I think G2's form is so mercurial, which is when you make these super teams of all the skilled aimers, who, by the way, the reason a super team never really works is because usually there's not enough resources for 3 people to be a start once. It cannot exist. One person's always compromising. Now, maybe you can do that by map, or maybe in this, I always thought the way it worked in FaZe was like fucked up shit. Like, Brokey's not really like a traditional AWPer anyway, so he doesn't really have to have the resources that one does. Also, at the same time, Rops does the like mega lurking, and Twist is like semi in the entry. So like, in a way it works, but in the same way in G2, that's why at their best, analysts, even some really good analysts, just watch the screen and go, they must win every tournament. And it's like, You think the G2 team's going to win everything? No, like, this streak ends, like, and it's over after that. Like, you know, they'll be the third or fourth best team. Spoiler, they probably are. Like, they blew this major, but they probably are. Like, if I put them in a tournament tomorrow, they would be my top 3 or 4 team to win the tournament. They wouldn't be number 1, though. They wouldn't have a factor that I could say for sure. Now, the reason the FaZe one's a bit different is, I pointed this out while they were doing it. Even all their championships they won by just being, like, mega clutch late in the game. And it's not even like Carrigan had to call a whole good game. Just at the end, it's like what Launders always says. Yes, after the golden call on the 29th round. If you had that call, you win the game, and it's the opposite of what that NiKo example. You have the memorable call that won the whole game, and everyone says you must be a genius. So if you look at the current team, here's the difference. When I said they were like 5% worse than the winning era, right before they won EPL and won the Grand Slam, I think they were very similar to that era. I'll point out, they just didn't win the close games. This major was really fucking bad. Like, I've never seen them look anywhere close to as bad as this. Like, they could have like a run in a game that was bad, but they'd always recounter with a run back, or second half they'd pick it up, or they'd win your map pick. But think of all these things, right? First of all, the Into the Breach best of 1 might be the lowest point ever of this FaZe team. I don't give a fuck about the old Rio B&E one. That was a full best of 3. They were in winning position. The ITB one, like, they just get back in the game and then immediately just like sort of throw up all over the floor and just lose the whole game. And they're just getting battered. Like the one area kassad's talking about, AIM, they're not even winning Angels, mate. Like, Rain is getting beat up like the player people thought he was 2 years ago, where they were like, cut him, get him out of CS. Is he the new Olafmeister? Get him out too. Like, that game, mate, makes people think you are fucking washed. Then you add the Twists angle. It's not great for Maui because almost immediately after he did that video, Twists has just shit the bed like every fucking tournament and big match after that. And quite frankly, looks like, relative to his role, the worst player in the team. And all I'll say is this: what will really make people upset if they're an NA fan is when you go to that page on HLTV with the team and you go to players and you go to like opening kills T-side and then you go T-side total, you'll quickly discover he's not even an entry player on that team anymore, mate. He doesn't get the entry attempts. Like, he's actually just fucking, I don't know what's happened to him. His game's gone off the boil. I think that's why kassad did that Carrigan did that tweet kassad referenced the one. It's like, he's in the DM because people know, like, if you've been watching the game, he's been having some fucking bad times. Then let's just look at their map pool. A map pool always tells you so much about a team, because since they didn't change players, map pool will nearly always, like we're talking about the G2 example, I don't care what your results are, your maps are strong based on who your players are and then how up to date your tactical understanding of the map is. Think about when they were at their prime and they won their championships. Their 2 best maps were Nuke and Inferno, and then after that they just play some Mirage, and usually they didn't even have to pick it. It was the decider, right? Right now, the best map for them, in theory, is fucking Overpass and Ancient, right? They're picking Overpass. That's mainly because most people just don't like that map. It's always in the middle of people's map pool. And even then, they can get their shit pushed in like Heroic did. So it's clearly not a great map for them. Then you look at Ancient. Go and look. They're never picking it. That's just like third maps and other people picking it, and they're just fragging out and winning the map. When you actually look at the classic maps, they've dropped off a fucking cliff completely. Then the Anubis map got added. Remember, there's another problem if you had a team that was on top Maui in the past. That was before Anubis came out. Since Anubis came out, and more teams either pick it or make it the third map if they have the last veto, right? Everyone's going to think because of that Na'Vi game, this team's good on that map. Are they? Fuck. The joke is, even in the Na'Vi game, they were this close to losing the whole thing. Like 15-9 or something. That would be the whole major over. So what have they got in the map pool? They've got like 1.5 maps. Like, you can never... right, if we're only doing right now, we're not doing like 2 months ago, like 2 tournaments ago. If we're doing right now, I'd agree with kassad. They're not top 5. Why would they be? The crazy thing is, it was actually only the aforementioned clutch factor, just kicking in out of nowhere in a couple of matches at this major, that got them to a top 8. It's actually a miracle they made top 8. Like, they could have lost so much. They could have lost to BNE. They could have lost to fucking Na'Vi. They could have lost, obviously they did to Heroic, but they could have even lost earlier. Like, the whole thing, even them to get a map was crazy. So, like, it was only the clutch factor at the end. That's all they had at the end. So I sort of agree. I don't necessarily know what you do tactically, because as I say, though, this is the curse of making teams like G2 and FaZe. Normally, right, this is why I actually think players in football get mega overrated, kassad. If you're on, like, the greatest team of all time, maybe if you're, like, Messi, I'll say you're, like, a GOAT, but there's going to be, like, 8 players on that team should be nowhere near best in their role, because what actually made the team work is that Messi can have all the resources he wants, and everyone else plays within a structure and does their job, and the job what the team almost is. Like, we're a really good team, and then we have the guy that can win the game for us. You don't really want, like, every great player. Like, everyone knows the classic example in football is the Galacticos of fucking Real Madrid in the early 2000s, where they had like the fucking FIFA All-11 team, and they couldn't win anything. They barely even could win the league, mate. Because the problem was, there isn't space for this fucking genius winger to be crossing it when he doesn't ever get the ball when the striker runs in and scores. If there's two strikers, that's less opportunities for the best striker. There's a reason why in modern football, if people don't know, there's all these like genius, like fucking fake nine, and like I play a 10 behind him and like pass the ball. It's like, because you can't just have like, if it really was just scoring goals in football, you'd have 4 strikers, you'd play a 4-2-4, and they just all take turns scoring 3 goals a game. It doesn't exist. It will never exist. And Counter-Strike, no matter what people think, tactically will always come down to execution, and then frags can maybe make up for it if you don't have execution. So if you don't have execution, you can't frag out forever. There isn't just fragging. It's still fragging within the context of the tactical game, guys.
Because it goes like up and down. Your form goes up and down, and you need to rely on something. They try to rely on something, there is empty space, and they fall back on their asses.
Yeah.
When that happens. Because they have nothing to run. You said like you don't know much about the tactics and what they can do so many things tactically. So many things with a couple of rules, couple of mechanisms, couple of processes before, during, and after a game that can elevate their game for 30%. But they don't have the capacity to actually understand what needs to be done because they don't pay attention to their coaching staff. They just have their analyst, their coach. They're doing probably some poor preparations, some poor vetoing, some poor practices, some poor theory session, and they ended up in this position where they cannot throw a single grenade that's, not outdated for like 7 years. And that's how they don't swing together. That's how they don't react. That's how they don't have 2 flashes past 1.30 mark on Inferno on the map that you absolutely must have flashes before anything else. Right, that's how you can do so many things. And go back to the Rain argument, right? We spoke about this 6 months ago, 8 months ago. When was it? When we said like, okay, he's not washed, but his prime has passed. He had his moments, he had his performances. Nowadays, it's becoming more rare. It happens, but it's more. But that's not what you need. You don't need 1 in 10, 1 in 7, 1 in 5. You need somebody that's going to be on a constant level of delivering frags for a team that's going for the championship. Right? I don't care who it is. It's not about throwing names. It's just like understanding maybe Rain's time has passed. Maybe we look for the future, combine somebody new into our team. For example, like Nerds did to Ants after they lost Pinks and they had this whole, shuffle a little bit. And then that's how we proceed. The same thing is going to happen to Vitality in about 5-6 months or 8 months when we see dupreeh fall off completely. And people are going to be, oh, yeah, he's still one of the greats. He is one of the greats and one of the greatest, but his prime will go away. And you need to think about like what comes after next. If you want to maintain the culture and, the championship mentality that you want to have in your organization. Or are you going to end up like EG? That's how you're going to end up. The same thing is FaZe is going towards that path if they don't do something radical right now. I mean, for the next season, obviously they have like a couple events coming up, but after that they have to do something. There is so many things, right, that can be done. Right now they're not even close to, and they're always like, it's just that picture of like that much just got me too much. It just tilted me as soon as I saw it.
Okay. Right, what I'm going to do on mine is I like to start slow and then build towards the more edgy ones. So I'll just start. I'll actually pick it up because kassad threw it out there. It was one of mine. I actually think one of the worst, most awkward parts of Vitality winning this major, I even predicted this, I think I said to Yanko on Twitter, is the second they win, all the dupreeh narratives are fucking ruined, throw them in the bin, no one will ever understand, every pleb will go like, but he was on 5 minutes, and like they already the cogs start turning, like maybe it was him, not like all the shit takes start coming, even though this is what sucks, this is why all the narratives are in the bin, because all the titles Astralis won, all the 4 majors with Astralis, he was second or third best player on those teams. At times, like the Katowice one, he actually could have been contender for the best. He could have won the MVP. I can't remember. That was the one they gave Makers to. He could have had the MVP at that one. Like there was even times where that's the other thing about that team was they did without all solo carried by device, obviously. But now people are going to take this major and add it to those, and that doesn't go in that. It's like they say there's 2 lunch tables, right? If he sits at the big boy table, he's got 4 majors. If he wants to sit at like the table that people who are like supportive elements or like low fragging entry players who make space, he's got 1 major doing that. So which is it? You can pick. We can do him at the kids' table. He's doing pretty well at that veteran role like for the last 2 tournaments. Or you can go to the big boy table and he's got 4, and even then, Device can go, they're mainly man, so you stay out the GOAT conversation. That's how that works in sports. That's how that narrative angle works. But I know people are going to go, but he has the most. He did it in 2 different teams. It's like, did he do it in this team? Did he do it? I've seen him play all this year. He's had 2 tournaments that they won, and their 2 stars fragged the fuck out, and he contributed, and that's why they won the tournament. In those 2 tournaments, by the way, he's the 4th best player, both times. You don't get as the 4th best player to be like, I won a major. You didn't win. You won a 4th best player major. That's a different convo. You didn't win like, put it this way, cadiaN wins 0 majors. He has the same number as fucking dupreeh if we're not counting being a star. Like, this doesn't count for him. So I think sadly now, people are going to build that narrative, and they're already doing it. They're trying to retcon history. Like, was he greater than we realized? It's like, no, he wasn't. Like, as long as you have him, for me, as like one of the best. That's why I said it to me. He's like a 2nd or 3rd best player in your team. I gave the example on Twitter, kassad. He's like the Xavi or Iniesta or something like that. At the end of the day, without Messi, they're not getting those fucking Champions Leagues. Like, it's all well and good saying that, but they didn't win those. They played a part because they're not the man. All the GOAT conversations are you the man? That's why actually Maui's point earlier was, if you have half the MVPs, some of those stats might be a bit inflated in that sense. If Simple wins like, let's be real, Simple probably lost 2 MVPs ever or something, you know, like Device barely lost any. So again, the only problem I have is people want to like open up a case of like, was dupreeh actually a top 10 player of all time? It's like, no, because here's the problem. There's people at the bottom of that top 10 list who had nowhere close to as many majors, but they had to just do it. And they had everyone on their back. They were the bus driver every fucking day of their life.
Yeah, the bus driver analogy is good. It's super valid. I would never have considered dupreeh to be the main man on any of his winning or his championship winning rosters. It was almost always going to be Device, and also you would even say it was by the committee, because it was just that Glaive and the calling of. Yeah, the calling from Glaive and everybody else on Astralis contributing in their own ways was more valuable. I will say this, I'm a little bit against you on the fact that I think that like shifting roles and abilities and shifting, like morphing your game to a different skill set so that you could get a little bit more longevity out of your career, and that you could, I would say that deserves recognition, but I would never consider a role shift major victory to be of the same gravitas as being the man major. If you're winning it as the MVP over and over again, we're obviously going to consider a guy that wins 3 majors as the MVP every single time to be more valuable than, let's just say, Taco went on with Liquid to win 5 more majors, but he was never the man, and he had 6 or 7 in his cabinet. I don't think anybody would consider in their right mind that Taco is the GOAT of Counter-Strike. It's just that he knew what he needed to do in order to contribute to a championship-winning team. You would easily consider someone like that to be the GOAT support player, but you're never going to say that they're the GOAT player, because being the all-around best player involves carrying your team, and a support player by nature is never going to do that. And so dupreeh in this role obviously was able to find value. I would say that he contributed more in my eyes to the Rio major, not the Rio major, the Rio IEM Rio's victory because of what he did against Cloud9 on the entry side, T side on Vertigo. But I wouldn't say that dupreeh at this major to me was anything special beyond, let's just say you put somebody there, like what's another player that could have felt that spot out? Like if you put Twist there, just it would have been just fine. He would have been just fine in that spot. So yeah, that's where it's a little bit weird. And I think like the rings argument is always just incredibly reductive, and it's why usually if people are going to cite the rings argument, or is that their foundational tool to grade players, then why are they not saying Robert Horry is their GOAT? And like no one's doing that. Just flat out. That it's just the easiest counter ever. Not like someone with the most rings is not, generally speaking, their all-time greatest player. And even the people that claim that are not putting Bill Russell on the top of their pyramid either. And so like dupreeh to me did accomplish something with this major, showing that he had versatility, and I do value that. But putting him like top 7 all-time greatest or anything top 10, I think there's an easy case that he's top 20. It's super easy case, but top 5, he's not even touching that for me.
Was a good analogy that I was going to mention Robert Horry, right? Because he won the championships with Houston Rockets, San Antonio Spurs, Lakers. He has 7 of them. Was he the best player in any of these teams?
No, of course
absolutely not.
Like the
was
fifth best, maybe.
If that. That's 6. Being generous.
Usually
right? But
6.
Did he have an important role in that winnings? We remember the 2002 against Sacramento Kings when Blooded Divas just bounced off that ball and he hit the 3-point shot in like 5-second mark or something that got him into the finals. Like, he had important roles, similar to dupreeh having a super important role in Astralis and now in Vitality. You know, could Astralis win these championships without dupreeh? Probably not. You know, probably not, because he was a big, but not the most important part of that machine, right? Device was the man. Zonic had all this thing under control. Magisk zipping with his clutches. Glaive with the calls, the rotations. Everybody had their own role, and he did it perfectly. That's why they won. He is doing a good job right now, but we're talking about the future. We're not talking about, like, you know, does he belong? He did win the major round. They did win Rio. Yes, the bracket was, but the title is still there. Nobody can deny that the title is there. The way they won it is a different story, right? He's gonna have that title forever. The thing is, like, in the future, what comes for him, I don't know. I think that's 6 to 8 months is what I would, if I'm Vitality, I wouldn't go over 1 year when it comes to dupreeh anymore. And you need to make these harsh decisions if you want to keep going as a championship contender. Like, you just need to make these harsh decisions. And, you know, one of them would be Rain, the second one would be dupreeh. Are those people Hall of Famers? Yes. Nobody denies that. Rain was the MVP of the fucking major, right? And he won the major, he won the Grand Slam, he won all these things. dupreeh won 5 majors. Are they, you know, the contenders for GOAT? No, they never will be. We all know who are the contenders for that title, and that will never change. So let's not, you know, make a big deal out of this thing when it comes to dupreeh. The supporting element in Counter-Strike is super important, as it's any other business that you run or anything that you do. If we are going on a broadcast and the guy, the producer, doesn't do his job, or the cameraman doesn't turn on the camera, puts the sound on, what the fuck are we talking to? Like, who are we talking to? No one, right? So we need a support crew. Everybody needs a support crew in order to make it work. You know, it's just it's the same thing in Counter-Strike. There is a guy who sets up the frag. There is a guy who takes the frag. And that's simply it, right? There is no anything past that. And as soon as people understand it and start appreciating these things, similar to Dota, how much more the support players getting appreciated in Dota 2 rather than in CSGO.
Oh, for God.
The people who place the wards, who cast the spells, who get the force stuff, the glimmer, all these things in Dota to save other people or their carries or whatever, right? That's the same thing like in Counter-Strike. Just a little bit different game, but it's the same, you know, logic behind it. So. Yes. We just need to take a little bit more appreciation when it comes to support, but when it comes to dupreeh not being, you know, considered as a GOAT, that's absolutely right. Did he have the 5 majors? Yes, that's amazing that nobody has done that, and he's going to be remembered for it for a long time, I believe. So I think I will end up on that one.
It's all good. By the way, here's the line I'll just say that should dissolve anyone still who has any resistance. If I said to someone who's brand new, you know, CS2's coming out, maybe someone comes to CS2 and they go, this dupreeh guy won 5 majors. Let me just pull up the last major he played. I want to see how good he was. Even you'd go, whoa. No, maybe go back to like kind of say 2019, you know, like you wouldn't say, yeah, just, you know what? Tell you what, get on the big screen, get the fucking popcorn out, get the soda, sit back and watch this guy at the last major. You'll see how good he was. Even you wouldn't say that, fan at home. So doesn't that say it all right there? Come on, does that say it all? Right, well, who's got the next? Have you got a take now, Maui?
Yeah, I'll take this one because this is something that I said on the desk. It was just received a bunch of pushback, which kind of just was like confusing to me because I don't feel like anything I said was wrong in the moment, but that with cadiaN's CSGO career being written now in stone, that he doesn't qualify for the S-tier captains or IGLs in this space. And this doesn't even feel like a hot take to me. This just feels like I'm just stating what just happened.
We mean of all time, right?
Yeah, we're talking all-time CSGO. We're talking all-time in the decade
not right
that
now, obviously. No,
of course. It's all-time CSGO IGLs and captains who I think there's a pretty short list for me. I mean, you guys could add some, and I think you would have a couple at least that would probably overtake him. But I would say that of all-time great in-game leaders, cadiaN is not there. The people that I would have there, easily, Glaive, Kerrigan, Fallen. I would put Zeus there. And I think that there's even a case, technically, for Exist, actually, if you think about early stuff. I think like with the narrative of what happened with him as a caller, maybe it's a little bit more flimsy, but in terms of championships, achievements, you wouldn't put cadiaN in that. And I know that rubbed a lot of people the wrong way when I said it, And I'm just saying it again here because I still stand by that decision completely. I still don't think that he can qualify for S-tier callers or captains, because one key component of being an all-time captain is having the nerve and composure to keep yourself playing to the level that you should be playing in high pressure games. And even though in my eyes cadiaN has brought forward a meta that many teams are copying in tier 1 and even tier 2, he hasn't delivered on the biggest stages in terms of championships, winning a single fall finals, which kassad would call a banana cup. That's to me is an indictment on his ability as a captain. And if we're going to even draw other narratives from other pundits in the space, like Richard, in a time when it's supposed to be one of the weaker levels of playing in Counter-Strike, and your IGLing ability isn't able to secure you more than a single championship, then what are you actually providing as an in-game leader other than a style and other than some great speeches that'll make it to the YouTube channel of ESL and Blast when they're saying, let's show the motivational speech, and then it's just him crying and losing? Like, how is that impressive? I don't need a guy to cry in a huddle and then lose.
Okay. I'll give you the response to that one, because I don't think people... How people interpreted that. Like, the thing is, like, you are absolutely right. Like, what you said was 100% spot on. Is he the all-time CSGO in-game leader? Absolutely not. Not even close. He cannot compare himself to Glaive in any manner, Fallen in any manner, kadiaN in any manner. Like, none of those.
Would you put Zeus? Would you put Zeus there? I'd put Zeus there.
The thing is, like, with
easily.
Zeus, it's very hard for me to put him in there, but he did have like this aura around him and this, charm, and his individual skill was like terrible, right? But he did have this thing behind him that he can rail up the people, and he had that personality. In game wise, I don't know. It would be I would have to think more about it before I say it. But these three that we discussed, kadiaN, and Glaive and Fallen, those two, those two. But the thing is, when it comes to cadiaN, I said it before, and we criticized it. I think first of all, let's address what you said and why people pushed back. I think it's the delivery that got people pissed off, and the timing that's got the people pissed off, right? Because they just lost. Everybody is feeling sorry for them, for heroic, the speech, the whatever, the bullshit, right? And then you come onto the desk and say like, oh yeah, you suck. Pretty much, right? As an IGL, right? And that's what got people, rubbed the wrong way. Which is, for me, I didn't see any problems with that. Like, somebody would say kicking a man while it's down, while he is down, but that's the best time to kick him anyway. So it's just the thing is, like, I don't disagree. I agree 100%. I think people disliked, and they got a pushback just because of the timing and the delivery. If you like waited till tomorrow and said like the same thing, nobody would say anything. Absolutely nothing. But when it comes to cadiaN, and I said, like, we criticized his IGL, things. Like, as a leader, he's a pretty good leader for that team. His story was amazing. Back from Rogue, and then, going to America, going back, and then, having these lineups and trying to make it work with all the bullshit and all these things, right? And we discussed the problems that he had, all this talking to the camera, while we're playing in the middle of the rounds, dancing, like, doing some stupid shit, wearing a Brazilian flag in Rio. Like, all these things, like, they shouldn't be a part. I don't know if I did this on the last hot take point, but the thing is that you should not be aware of the cameras whatsoever, or the flags, or anything. Like, speeches, like, who does that? Nobody does that. That's in the movies, man. Like, the speeches and shit, and crying in front of the... Like, that's for me. Maybe I'm wrong in this one, but that's just my opinion, right? Maybe people think different when it comes to this matter. But all in all, tactically, as an IGL, he's not even close to be one of the greatest. Absolutely not even close. As a leader of his team, he's absolutely, deserved to be there, and he is the one who got that team to where it is. And there is no discussion about that. Some other people didn't perform multiple times in the finals. That's another story as well that we cannot forget. And but him, especially as an IGL, you're 100% right. It's just the delivery and the timing that people kind of dislike. That's what I think.
Right, a couple of things. One, I actually forgot to mention this earlier when Kassad pointed out that everyone got mad at his tweet about the HooXi one. I can just tell you on that one, right, you will never win that battle, because here's what happens with idiots who like drama. They never actually educate themselves on what the drama was about or find out, like, what was the timeline? Who said what first? And so what they do, happens to me all the time, is someone could basically come and tell me, like, fuck my mother's face, everyone in my family to die, I've never done anything, like, I'm autistic as fuck, I shouldn't even be allowed to talk, should be fired. But then what happens is, when I clap back, they'll even do stuff like fuck up the timeline and just take some other tweet where they went like, I think Thorin's overrated. And go, just because he's overrated, you've said he's shit and ugly. Like, they just do that all day long, mate. Like, essentially, because they don't like you, they're not going to invest time to find out if you were justified. They're just going to go, oh, he's attacking HooXi when he's down. Even though literally all you did was, we have a saying in English, what is good for the goose is good for the gander. Like, you did exactly to HooXi what he did to you. You did it in a way to actually show his reputation is overrated. He did it to show your reputation is overrated. That is called fair play. It's literally fucking just fair. You did back to him what he did to you. You didn't even do anything egregious. And you did a fucking tweet. Did you even tag him? I don't think you tagged him, right? Didn't you just tweet? No. Yeah, there's another thing. I follow this particular code. When I do a mega flame, unless you've gone at me directly, I don't tag you in the fucking tweet. If you come to my Twitter and see it or it goes already, okay, that's whatever. I'm doing my job as an analyst. So then I'll also tie it to like the Maui angle, which is when people are doing that, like, oh, come on, he's just been eliminated from the major. Like, what if he saw this? No one gives a fuck. The broadcast isn't for him. Have you never seen sports, you fucking cretins? I watch football. I told everyone this already. In the modern day, my favourite guy is Roy Keane, mate. I used to love Alan Hansen when he was on there. Because what these guys do is, that's actually the moment where, as an analyst, if someone plays disgracefully in a match, if someone costs a team the whole match, if someone blows like some great like calls, they misuse a player, that's exactly when you call them out. In fact, often, yes, you're a prisoner of the moment, you're going to be more emotional about it. You'll certainly put some spice in the fucking curry, as it were, and there'll be a little bit more. But that's also, the broadcast isn't for them. It isn't like fan service. Like, oh, and if you're a fan of this player, or you're the player himself, really sorry it happened to you, mate. Like, no. Like, that is not what it's for. It's for the viewer, and they need to know contextually if that guy blew it. Because I actually had a take on cadiaN, and I'll spin it into this. One, I agree, actually. Here's the thing. At the moment, he's probably been like a top 3 IGL for the last, like, year and a half, 2 years or something. But that, first of all, it was always debatable if he was the best. And then secondly, I actually think he's one of the I'm going to tie this in. He's one of the reasons they don't win the championship. So firstly, I'll just say, I did a quick tally there. I think the reason why he's nowhere near the greatest IGLs is because I can immediately go Glaive, Carrigan, Fallen. People are going to go, Fallen? I'm taking Fallen even before they had the super team, mate. He was doing miracle shit when they had like bomb-ass players. They used to win every 5v4 with no players at all because he just actually had the like understanding. If you don't know, he invented half the smokes that all the fucking NA teams copied. Then he had like the first couple of years of the super team, and then it felt, look, 2018 onwards, that's why I think he's overrated as fuck. But before that, he was fire. That's why I said he was the best. Then I'll immediately put Zeus there. People are just forgetting the early days. Zeus was very good in the early days when they had some whack Na'Vi lineups and they just had a Guardian, or they just had like Guardian and Flamey and a bit of season, you know, like all that shit. So, and then you have the Gambit run, even the Na'Vi one with Simple when he came back. People forget it's only at the end he didn't give a fuck and was just phoning it in. They still had a couple of years where he was shit as a player, but actually as a caller he was still pretty good. Like, they could still get it. They still would get in the site when they did all those late round executes. They didn't not get the bomb down. That was later shit. That was people confuse all the eras and conflate them together. And then that's 4. And quite frankly, even though I'm not the biggest fan ever, I'll chuck Pronax in there. One of the best mid-rounders of all time. A guy who just basically used all the pieces in his team. You look when they had the other ones. Here's the thing, it's not top of the list character, but there's not that many names can go up. There has to be a 5th one here. You didn't say a 5th one. After that, by the way, you're talking about people like Existence and MSL, so it's not a convoy you really want to have. And spoiler, Sean Gare's nowhere near that. Let's shut the fuck up. So now if we go to I'll spin it into this, because I was going to make this a hot take, so I'll tag onto it. One of the reasons he can't be the best in-game leader, this is killing me, is because he, the player, is not only costing them some of the games as an AWPer, but he's making the call as the IGL to turn and go, let's give cadiaN the AWPer this play. Thanks, cadiaN the fucking IGL. I go for the hero play, and I have fucked the whole game up. Because here's the problem. The real thing I think, I'm going to do a whole video on it, that this ties into, that Kassad's referring to, but he's doing it tangentially, is cadiaN has the worst fucking case of main character syndrome I have ever seen from an IGL and a mediocre tier 1 AWPer. First of all, he's an exact example of someone I am not saving the AWP for if I am certain players on my team. You do not get it every round. You are not Simple and Ziwu. They are the ones that we will save and not go for a 1v2 and to give the AWP to if our worst player is alive. Then secondly, like I say, he is actually trying. He did it in that match, which is why he got eliminated. He tries to make hero plays that aren't even necessary. If people go back on the round we're all thinking about on the B site on Inferno, you almost, that's a round Lurpus invented a term for years ago. You win the round almost if you take your hands off the keyboard. This motherfucker couldn't stop pressing more keys, came in, because here's why. Here's his problem. And you know what? Apex has a little bit of this in him too, but luckily for him, he had dog shit opponents and he has two of the best players in the world to win the major for him. What they want is this. They don't just want to win. They don't just want to win the major. They don't just want to be number one. They want it to be at the end that they're not only the one that did the big play, but they're remembered as like the main reason why. cadiaN's play there was like, I'm going to win this map for the team. And then when I do it, I'm going to probably go like, boo! And do some more shit. And then everyone's going to go, oh, cadiaN, I fucking love him. He's so sick. He's the captain of the heart of the soul. And you actually did there was just basically scored an own goal in football. Now you lost the game when you had the chance to win. It's fucking insane. I think that's actually one of the most egregious ones I've seen in a while. He does it generally, but it's more like, he just has a bad AWPing series and he puts himself in spots a lot, etc. Also, I'll add this in there. I often say as an IGL, one thing I'm impressed with is he has all these set pieces that they only try once in a game. They don't spam them 5 times. How many of those set pieces, you can go and look, just are like a boost that gets him 1 AWP kill. Now look, that's good. But bro, if you factor in how shit his stats as an AWPer are, and he's getting boosts that get him like a free kill, that means your actual real AWPing is just fucking mediocre. It's actually egregious. Like, praise you, I'm not a fan of HooXi. HooXi's a way better AWPer than fucking cadiaN. Like, if you actually gave him all the space cadiaN makes for himself, he'd fucking frag out some of the games. So, I just think, my problem with him is, if he was just an IGL, if he didn't AWP, if he could just let the ego go, here's the problem. It actually shows me you aren't the best guy in the world that you're playing in this movie. Because the best guy in the world, like the leader like that, is the one where it's like, actually, you find out 2 years later, like, oh yeah, he took all that abuse and we were winning, but everyone said he was shit. It was actually him behind the scenes empowering us all. He was doing the things here. He would even take the shit knowing that, like, Tessus and Stown can't handle it, so he thought, I'll take it on myself. That's the best guy. He wants to play the best guy ever in a fucking movie called cadiaN, how a guy went from fucking journeyman to greatest in-game leader ever. And unfortunately, he has blown it, and I'll say it right now, there's no more CSGO majors, and there's only a CS2 major 1 year from now. In 1 year, nobody can know their team's going to be good enough to win. You had 4 of these motherfuckers, your team was right there. You go look at the 4 majors they played after the online era, his team's like 3rd, 2nd, or best team in these majors, and they never got one. In fact, they never got close, because even the final, it wasn't a great game. So I think that's so sad, because I think he's missed his window as well, mate. And the saddest thing is, if he could have put the ego aside a little bit, and he'd won as an IGL, he actually would end up overrated as the IGL, because then everyone would look at his players and go, where's his Ziwu? Where's his fucking thing? And the joke is, in a way, he wanted to be the Ziwu of his team. Well, you know what? There's a saying that Shaq once said to Kobe way back before Kobe were really good, and he was saying it to diss him. Because in America, they call it one of those long hot dog type things, a hero, that sandwich, right? He goes, Kobe always wanted to be a hero. He didn't know that a hero's just a sandwich. That's what I'd say to fucking cadiaN, mate. I'd just say that.
Oh, you're absolutely right when it comes to this. We agreed on this one. We criticize this shit. Like, it cost them too much at the end. Like, all these things, like not being focused on the game, and all these things that was good enough for, like, getting to the finals, and like, they have good pieces and everything that how they played was fair enough. But when it gets to the finals, they're just nowhere to be seen whatsoever.
Right, I've got one last one.
The one like little point I had about this is that cadiaN and Heroic so botched their chances because they were by far the most consistent team in the tail end of CSGO post-pandemic. They're the only team that made it to all 4 playoffs, all of the majors. They made it at Stockholm, they made it at Antwerp, Rio, and at this one. And to lose to think of some of the losses there. Antwerp, or to this one to Gamer Legion, the last one to Outsiders in the grand final. I guess
Rio.
The Navi loss.
Yeah.
Was it G2? Was it?
He's talking about all the tournaments now.
Other ones too. Yeah, sure. Yeah, some of the losses are just you're the better team going into it. Like, okay, when I made that point earlier about NiKo being the biggest choker in majors, I was actually on the cusp of saying cadiaN is the biggest also, because you're favored in almost all of these matchups. I think they were only maybe once the underdog in one of their playoff matches at
maybe Navi Antwerp or something.
I think Navi Antwerp, yes. And the thing is, they were I think they were ahead on Nuke, and then they just started
very close.
calling
Leading
terribly.
Yeah.
They just started falling apart as a team, and I thought that was going to be the stage nerves, but then the stage nerves just kept on coming. And yeah, for cadiaN, the main character thing is just like the funniest and also just most accurate depiction of who he sees himself as, and how we know from watching him that it's just not the case. And so for him to lose that opportunity in CSGO is basically why I put that whole idea out there. And I know people, like, again, like, you know, that maybe the timing or whatever, but it's like, you know, when we got first word on these things, because we're on the desk immediately, I'm going to put a stamp on his career, and that is the stamp that basically he missed his opportunities here, because who knows if the Copenhagen major in CS2, he's able to have the redemption arc, and maybe CS2 ends up being his game, but CSGO was frankly not his game.
Well, it was like if his game, right? Good enough to be, you know, remembered in some way, right? He's not the top tier or something like that. But the thing is, like, you know what fixes the stage nerves, Maui? Structure, mechanisms, processes, like all these things, the coaching staff, like everything that you get yourself do all these things before you get to the stage. So when you get to the actual stage, all you can see is the fucking game and people in front of you. You know exactly what needs to happen on the first map. You know exactly what needs to happen on this gun round. You know exactly what needs to happen against this pistol round. You know exactly what needs to happen in most of the scenarios, right? And that's where you shut off all the noise, because when you go in unprepared, like all over the place, without the structure, without all these things, everything that just from the outside kind of piles up on you, and you end up crumbling the way they crumbled millions of times so far. They lost what, 3-4 finals, you know, and now they lost to Gamer Legion in the major they were supposed to win. There was an open road for them to win this major, and they crumbled in the semifinals against Gamer Legion after they won 1-0. They were leading 1-0. So for me, it's just you said it, stage nerves, and it's like so many points that I can make. I can talk till tomorrow about this, but yeah. Before you go on to your take, right, Duncan, I wanna come back to the HooXi thing and why I think it's HooXi's fault that G2 didn't make it past Legend stage, right? And I'm not even gonna say about the NiKo because people already know that. It's not about that when I'm bashing him as like an IGL, like a bad IGL in terms of like, you know, bad calls or, you know, bad strats, or, you know, his aim is shit or whatever. The biggest problem that I have seen is he doesn't have a fucking clue about the players that he has in his team. He doesn't have a clue who is capable of doing what in that team, and I'm absolutely 100% sure I can give my fucking left hand for it. I'm left-handed, by the way. So I can just give it because I'm 100% sure that's happening. Like I said, I rewatched their demos round by round, match by match, every single one of them. And I can see so many things that NiKo is forced to do, that Hunter is forced to do, that Justin is forced to do, that makes no sense when you compare it to what type of players they are. The biggest example, you can see it in the video that I made about the nuke. They are doing the upper hits on nuke, like upper rushes, upper hits, upper, you know, executes with pistols and a couple of utility against rifles and all that. Now, this can work if you are big. If you are that type of team, if you have a player like NiKo, who is one of the best Eagle players there is, if you have Hunter, who is one of the best reactionary players there is, if you have JKS, who can do whatever he wants pretty much, and he can win against anyone, I mean, a 1v1 with a pistol, and you obviously have Mauisnake, who is good enough with a pistol, you organize your rounds based on their strengths. Not based on what's easiest for you to fucking call, which is an upper hit that you practiced against tier 7 team on practice, and it worked because they don't know how to fucking defend the upper side. That worked 10 times there, and they thought, yeah, this must be good. So they doing it against Vitality, they get slaughtered every single time. You would rather, if I'm the coach, if fucking anybody who has anything smart to say there. He said, okay, NiKo, you are good in a 1v1 with a deagle. You know how to work outside. We're going to create a strat where I'm going to buy a P250 full utility, and a couple of people more are going to buy some utility. We're going to create a space for you so you can go outside and work. And we're going to send Hunter with you to react, and we're going to set up the round like that. That's what you do on practice. You don't book fucking practice day in advance and go play 4 maps, pick up your stuff and leave and just go fucking to the gym or whatever the fuck you do, right? You just prepare those rounds for your players if you are the coaching staff. Okay, NiKo, you are good with the deagle. You are not good with running out of door to the smoke and dying. I can tell you that Justin hates it. Hunter fucking hates it, 100%. When he needs to run in, where somebody's supposed to be flashed, when it isn't, when he needs to run in through the smoke and the M4 is waiting, and not just any M4, Zyvu is waiting for you, and fucking dupreeh is waiting, Spinks is waiting for you on the upper side. How the fuck do you gonna win that round? No amount of flashes is gonna win you that round. So you need to understand what kind of players that you have in your team and what are their capabilities. I'm not gonna give a fucking deagle to Jax and tell him, yeah, you need to be smart and go outside and lurk with the fucking deagle and maybe you get something. No, I'm gonna send Jax to die, and I'm gonna send fucking Mauisnake to die, and I'm gonna send fucking HooXi to die, and I'm gonna send NiKo to get the trade, get the space, and play the mid round, and maybe, just maybe, I win that round, and if I don't win it, I take away 3 or 4 guns, so their economy is low, so I know what to call in the first gun round. That's how you play, that's how you prepare your team. But they don't know that. They know just to talk shit on Twitter. They just know how to run these bullshit strats. They know how to do these stupid things and ended up failing. And now I don't even know what's going to happen. And that's why I got pissed off at HooXi. That's why I made that tweet, combined with the fact that he called me out in that Katowice, and now this happened. So there you go. Take responsibility and leave.
I will say the reason I resonated with your tweet the most about HooXi is that I just simply thought the veto for their final match was incorrect. Versus Fnatic, who have 2 players that I would consider to be specialists on Vertigo, you're going for Vertigo just because they said they prepped it. Like, the reason you prepped it because you thought they would pick it is because you thought it would be a good map for them, which is why you had to prep it so much that you couldn't just let it go, that you couldn't just play your game on it, because you need to know what they're doing on it. And if you're going to recognize and respect the team that you're playing against enough that you are going to put in that additional prep to try to beat them on it, then you shouldn't actually go to that map and give them that one, because it's basically like an ace in the hole. You're not trying to give them another opportunity to beat you. And so for Nuke was the first map that I truly believed in G2 on. It's a map that where I thought that their CT side aggressions were very unique. The fact that you have NiKo responsible for such a large portion of the map towards outside, and I know you were referencing the Nuke game that they played against Vitality, but I think that if they played against Fnatic on Nuke, I think that's like a 16-11 victory for G2 at best for Fnatic. Yeah, I thought that was a pretty clear-cut victory.
Maui, let me put my cat away. The thing is, like, it's what's important, like, just look at Nuke as a map for G2, right? You have NiKo, who is one of the most impactful people on the outside, right? If you want to stop him, you need to commit multiple people. You need to commit a setup which frees up space for Hunter, for JKS, for all these people. Look at their CT side. Mauisnake, look at their game. Mauisnake starting Secret, starting fucking outside, starting ramp, starting, upper, going to hut, trying to get a kill, through the door. There's so many opportunities, so much threat potential from one player, and then you have NiKo, and then you have Hunter, and then you have JKS on ramp, it's very hard to get past him, right? And so many elements there that you can just use against team like Fnatic. If you play any other team that's good on Nuke, then maybe you can just, in some weird way, even then I wouldn't justify it, but you can try playing mind games in the veto. But against Fnatic, who are supposed to be better in every aspect of the game, minus HooXi, and let's say who is the worst Fasher in Fnatic, pound for pound, who is the better team for every single position in that team? G2. Absolutely G2. And then, obviously, then you go on the T side, again, impact on outside, NiKo's impact on outside, Justin's impact on the door pressure and getting to the vent, all these things, Mauisnake going like with an op everywhere, just doing his things. So he doesn't even have an op sometimes, but he still has an impact. And all these things lead you to believe that that's the bet they should have gone for. And he doesn't understand that. He doesn't understand his team. He doesn't understand the game they need to play to win. And that's why I want him out. That's why.
By the way, just as an aside, because I hate when people do absolute one-for-one comparisons when a million variables are off. When all the people, because here's the thing you learn about people on Reddit and Twitter, is eventually everyone's shit and doesn't know anything. That's what their opinion is. Like, Janko was a genius when I was an analyst because I know nothing. Now Janko's a moron, failed coach of MIBR and FaZe, idiot, doesn't know anything about the game, may as well be kicked off. Maniac's the genius now, or Sponge's the genius now. Kassad, like, here's the joke again, like, if you'd have had someone like fucking when Richard used to do it, they'd go, Kassad knows way more than you. Now Kassad never coached anyone. There were bombs. Were all. So here's what I'd like to do. If you want to say that Kassad doesn't know what he's talking about in G2, it infers you do think that the Swanee guy, the coach of G2, is somehow responsible for those victories, those titles they won, Katowice, etc. So here's what I'd love to do. One, I'd love to take Swanee in a time machine and go to 2019 and go see this team of like New Zealand and Australia. That's your team. Coach them. Go ahead and coach them. And I'll tell you what, I'll see you in the major semi-finals. See you, mate. And then secondly, on the one of like, well, Kassad, he wouldn't be able to do it. Well, here's the thing. We can test that premise, actually. Give Kassad, Mauisnake, JKS, Hunter, NiKo, and put in whatever fifth you want. Could even fucking maybe be HooXi. I'd like to see that experiment run, actually. That would be entertaining viewing for me. I would like to see that. Anyway,
the thing is like, the thing is like, for that to happen, so many things would have to, be kind of let go of in terms of like the organization, right? They need to let go. Like, there is no. It's not like they call me. Hey, you want to do it? Yeah, I want to do it.
I need 1 sec. But
it's just yeah. Right. It's not like you want to do it and it's like yeah, sure, I'm in. Like pay me the money and I'm in. No. There needs to be a just if you're talking hypothetically.
Yeah, of course. No, of course.
It's just like it would have to be on my terms.
Yeah.
If either on my terms or no deal. That's the vibe. Even though it's funny that you mentioned, I have been thinking about coming back to competitive environment. Like I miss it because I watched like so many demos in the last well, God knows, right? And it was like it kind of sparked a little bit of a fire, that to be on that side of the server. Even though it's much more stressful and you can see the white beard and the fucking white hair and lack of hair and lack of fucking brain cells, but the thing is like it would be an interesting thing to do anyway.
I just think, here's the thing though, mate. I just hate when they do that because it doesn't make sense. It's the same in sports. Like, it's not like I can't actually win the Champions League if I'm the best fucking coach, but I have like the 11th best team. It's impossible. I can't do it. Like, I have to have the players, like the guys that are going to win. And sometimes the best coach doesn't win. A lot of them are going to have some fucking like all world players. And the point is, there wasn't any all world players on Renegades, you fucking idiots. Like, same with the FaZe one. Even the FaZe one isn't as bad as people make out. Like, they never had a fucking IGL the whole time Janko was there. The joke is the best IGL they had was NiKo, and that just, if anything, took away from NiKo's fucking game. It was stupid as fuck. So again, like they always make it sound like you had everything and you just didn't win. Like no one should win in that scenario.
You can have the best strategical plan as you want, but if you have weak pieces on the board, then they're gonna run over.
Yes.
Right. That's all it is. Like, and when it comes to like people, when it comes to like trying to. You're facing like, let's say, Zivus and Simples and anything. Many people are making mistakes by trying to anti-strut them, right? Or something like that, trying to like play. That those people are going to have like good games. What you need to do as a coach, as a team, right? And you need to make this as a rule, as one of the processes and mechanics. When you have that type of player that you play against, what you need to do is not try to stop him, because you're never going to stop him. You just need to make it hard for him to get those numbers. Yeah. Don't re-swing. When you play 3v1, don't fucking rush. Don't re-peek. Don't fucking overextend. Don't give away the extra gun when you are 4v1 and you're chasing down a player. Swing together. Make these plays harder. Make his numbers, harder than it should be, right? Just as harder as that you make for him, it's going to be better for you, because you will never be able to stop those players. But that's a coaching subject.
I've got one last one. It is a good hot take, but it's not one that probably needs half an hour discussion, so I'll just throw it out there. It's not what the start of the sentence is, so hold on. Trigger discipline, boys, right? One of the reasons why this Vitality major win is so underwhelming isn't just like on paper, the rankings of the teams entering the major were the worst you'll ever see for a major run of a champion. The teams themselves full of inexperienced players, people who've never done it before, people sometimes who didn't even have to win big games always to be in that match, people who are going 3-2 in Swiss system, not even the best teams in the major before the fucking playoffs. The actual real reason why it's so underwhelming is the fucking eye test of the games. The 3 series they played, I'm even going to give them a pass for the final, because even if Game of Legion had have sort of like done a little bit better on T side, they might still have lost the nuke game. On Overpass, even if they win all the 1v2s and 1v1s, it's still probably like 16-12 win. The other 2 series, I will not give any pass whatsoever for. Into the Breach is one of the worst teams to ever make the playoffs of a fucking major, and they had both those maps in the first half right alive, if not winning the fucking map. In fact, that's even why Ziwu, you know, is like an exceptionally good player like Simple, because he can actually have halves and like 3/4 of a match that are shit, but at the end go so bonkers for 4 rounds. The stats are still like, what the fuck, 1.5 rating, and it's like, let me take you to rounds, homie, like where you're just losing straight up to Cypher in duels. It's just entering you with like no flash whatsoever. Just swing the corner and kill the best player in the world, who's an AWP fucking primary main. I bet every other fucking player like Teslas was like, how do you do that? It's like, it's fucking dark technology, mate. No one knows. It's like fucking tier 2 UK shit, apparently. And then next series on, so the Into the Breach one, by the way, Into the Breach is so bad as a team, they can't close the game. If they had any ability to close the game, you'd have been fucking squeaky bum time. And then the Apex one is criminal to me, because in the Apex one, bro, on that Vertigo game, Nok was fucking tooling Ziwu for most of that map. You can go back and watch it. He wins the fights, he wins all the situations, he's better positioned. I think Nok has never played a major before that. I think it's his first one. I think he played like Katowice when it wasn't a major, right before we all went online. It's not even a LAN player, mate. This is actually where he's proven he's good. So these aren't even teams, by the way. Where are the heavy hitters on these teams? Like the Cypher guy's pretty good as a one-off. Who the fuck's the heavy hitter on Apex? Jacob didn't even play that well. And the others are sort of like, Nox sort of a pretty good, like a little bit above average. Like, bro, this was crazy. Because actually the sad thing was, it's like, I know there is that factor of like, but we're supposed to win. That's true, but at the same time, if you put the greatest teams of all time against those teams, they gorilla monkey stomped them all. They shit stomped them so hard that everyone even goes, this major was the worst ever. Look at the teams they played. The joke is, by the end, Vitality, like some fucked up wrestling narrative, put the underdog over each time in the match so it would look impressive they came back and won. It's like, what the fuck? It's like you're actually, it would be like if you were the most clutch player ever. So you got your credit for being clutch. You didn't just win by 20 in the basketball game. You actually throw the third quarter so it gets really close. And at the end you go like, give me the play. And you like cross up some fucking bum ass player who shouldn't be there and be like, yeah, that's my Michael Jordan moment, baby. So it ain't. They were doing that against the best teams in the era. Like, so that's the angle I couldn't handle. Is these 2 games. It's why I think those teams do suck. I'm sorry. Great runs, but you suck as teams. I'll maybe give Game of Legion some credit. The reason Into the Breach and Apex suck as teams is you can't close even when you have the lead. You can't close when a player's popping off. You can't close when they're shit in the bed. Like, tier 1 teams close games. That's why they're tier 1 teams.
And before Maui goes, I'm going to answer. I'm going to tell you why this is happening. I was going to save this for my own video. I'm going to make it anyway. Okay. But this thing is like our game. Why is this a shit major? Why was the worst major? Why was the worst players that we ever seen in the last 10 years? Because game has become so shit and it's so mechanically driven. Ever since the COVID entered the era and the online era, the game is so mechanically driven that we don't have any more. That's why you couldn't name any more IGLs. All the IGLs that you mentioned are from before. Game is so mechanically, individually driven that it's making me sick. That's why you have players right now who have no depth behind being sharp. No depth. Take m0NESY. If he doesn't have 25, 30 kills, he doesn't oppose any threat to other team. He's a kid. Yes, I know. He's going to be good. That's fine. We're not talking about that. But at this moment, he's just an example of many stars as well. They have no contribution to the game if they're not hitting a lot of shots. They're just go back to the past and tell me the device when he doesn't have a great game. Does he have impact to the game? Beat utility, beat rotation, beat being extra present. He does. Today's kids, they don't have it. They don't have depth behind being sharp right now whatsoever. And that comes also not just only on those kids because they don't know. They're just kids. They're just shooting sharp and, they're looking to get better. They need to look up to their IGLs. They need to look up to their coaches, which are nowhere to be seen. Like I said, there is no processes. There is no mechanics. There is no structure in those organizations because everything is being done mechanically, individually by this like individualistic meta that is going on right now. These kids, once they fuck up, once the shooting stops, once the aim stops, they have nothing to turn back to because they have no depth behind that fucking aim. And nobody is there to teach them right now. Who do we have as one of the best coaches right now? Zonic, old school. Blade, old school. Who else? Saw from Ants, he's doing a good job. He's relatively new. Who else? Do we know anyone else? You're talking about the
Exist, maybe.
Exist maybe, but he's new in the role.
True,
he's not
true.
a coach.
Yes, that's true.
He needs a lot to learn about like gathering his team up and dealing with this psychological pressure they have on the fucking stage. But no one else. There is no one who can bring the depth to those players that are talented. That's why they're shooting. When they're shooting well, it looks like, oh, wow, like you said, into the breach cypher and whatever, like they're doing some crazy shit and everybody's clapping. It's a highlight. It's whatever. But when that stops, where do you turn to? You turn away, you go for a timeout and your coach calls a fucking B-rush or calls another default. On practices, he doesn't know how to tell you, like, listen, when this is not going well, I need you to save utility against this type of teams so you understand, like, maybe late utility would help me to stop them a little bit more, so maybe they lose more flashes, so they maybe mess up their execute, so maybe I get a double because they don't have that extra flash. Right now, I'm just going to mechanically use all of my nades, run out. If I don't kill anyone, maybe I go back. If I kill every 3 people, it's great. It's going to be a highlight. That's what happens right now. And nobody's paying attention to that because we have dumbasses in organizations who are running this shit into the fucking ground. And there you go.
I'll circle back to the Into the Breach win for Vitality. Where basically the way that Vitality beat them there, and we're talking about structure. I'm trying to even like wrap this back to what Kassad said. I'll just say with that victory, with the eye test and everything like that, yeah, I think it's just a little bit odd that you kind of have to go, and actually this does relate to what Kassad said. You kind of have to just go blow for blow a lot of the time with a lot of these individually driven teams that are coming up from tier 2. I find it a little bit weird because I have 2 different stances on this. I think that teams like Apex actually showed that they were playing some incredibly great tactical CS. They had some great utility protocols. They knew how to use nades. Actually, in my opinion, better than some tier 1 teams.
And you know why? Sorry, I have to cut you off for just a second. And you know why? Because they have Jaken, old school, Stiko, old school. Kuben was the coach for how many years? That's why. That's why they have all these players. Stiko is a player with depth behind him. Yeah, sure. He understands when he needs to react. Jakim is a player with the depth behind him. That's why he's a good player. Kuben knows some of these things. I don't know how much, but he knows just enough. So I'm sorry to cut you off, but continue. Sorry.
No, yeah, I agree with that because I think Apex and Into the Breach epitomize 2 different sides of what I see tier 2 CS as, where Apex was more on the trying to refine all the tactics, all the nades, all the utility, protocols, procedures, reactions, whereas Into the Breach was super reliant on big fraggers like Cypher. And when, for example, Into the Breach, despite all of us remembering just that they were such a great Vertigo team, they had the 2nd worst flash assists on Vertigo of any team at the major. You know, they weren't using tactics and utility to get themselves space and actually carve out openings. It was mostly off the back of their individuals that were providing for them. So for me on this, I mean, for Vitality and their run and everything like that, I think the biggest indictment on their run and the quality of it was, you could still just boil it down easily to the quality of competition and opponents that they face when they were in the playoffs or at the major as a whole. But I also think, like, I mean, even the teams that they played against, weirdly pushing them in ways where, like, think of even just the way that Astralis won at Berlin. Like, they just wiped the floor with James because his style wasn't as refined yet, and a Vanguard. And you would have thought that the styles that Into the Breach and Apex played were lacking in various elements, and so why are you not just smashing them? So yeah, it was really odd that they didn't just own people. Like, they should have just been destroying people. That was most shown because of the experience difference and stage nerve difference that they had over Gamer Legion in the grand finals. But in terms of the other games, why are these competitive?
Yes.
By any means.
By the way, I will say, like, when I say the Into the Breach one, I think just, shit. Like, I think that's one of the most miraculous things to ever happen, that one tournament. Apex is already shit in the context they were playing Vitality. Like, you shouldn't even be allowed in that game. Like, I don't care how good Jacob and Nork are. Like, you can't fuck with Spinks and Zemu right now. Like, you shouldn't even be on the server with them. So, if you're letting it get close, something's going wrong on Vitality's side there. I mean, I even thought, actually, of the 3 teams, this is a separate thing on another podcast again. When we were asked on a different podcast to pick of the 3 teams that they played who could continue to be good, I didn't pick Game Legion. 1, because I think they'll get their players sniped, and 2, some of their players mad overperformed. Like, I actually picked Apex of the 3 that looked like they had real Counter-Strike at least. Like, I gave them that.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's it. It's all good.